The Great Gatsby is widely recognized as one of the greatest novels of all time. Author F. Scott Fitzgerald's intended messages within the story are framed by countless literary devices, but most apparent is his use of the oxymoron and paradox. The plot is predicated upon the contradictions within the novel. Many people don't fully understand, however, what an oxymoron and/or a paradox is, or perhaps they don't know the difference between the two. Both express a contradictory thought. That is where their similarities end, and they are used throughout the book when describing people and places and certain objects. An oxymoron is two words that are directly next to each other that contrast, usually an adverb or an adjective followed by a noun. And a paradox is a contradictory statement that can be more than one sentence. The etymologies of oxymoron and paradox are as follows. The Oxford Dictionary defines an oxymoron as a figure of speech in which apparently contradictory terms appear in conjunction. The word derives from the Greek words oxys, meaning sharp, and moros, meaning foolish, and the word, as we know it, was formed during the mid-17th century. A paradox, also provided by the Oxford Dictionary, is defined as a seemingly absurd or self-contradictory statement or proposition that when investigated or explained may prove to be well-founded or true. It is similar to an oxymoron in the sense that paradox also derives from the Greek words para, which means distinct from, and doxa, which means opinion. The word has evolved from paradoxon to paradox in the mid-16th century, and its first iteration was Greek, while its modern iteration is late Latin. The character of J. Gatsby within himself is a paradox. This comes into play with the title of the novel, The Great Gatsby. The title itself, The Great Gatsby, is an oxymoron, and is the first example in the novel of that. The word great, if defined by the context of the book, means something grand, luxurious, and larger than life, which is the type of lifestyle Gatsby has spent the last 5 years building for no one but Daisy, who has already attained that lifestyle with Tom. The second part of the title of the book, Gatsby, is a last name that the character creates for himself. He originally is named James Gatz, and he's from a poor family in the Midwest. The last name Gatz has various meanings, but for the purpose of the oxymorons, the most important is the phrase left-handed. According to Merriam-Webster, one of left-handed synonyms is the term morganatic. Morganatic means of relating to or being a marriage between a member of royal or noble blood and a person of inferior rank, in which the person of the inferior rank's status remains unchanged. In this case, the inferior rank is Gatsby, as he had made up this great identity when in reality he is a poor man. While he has money now, he will always be a poor boy in the eyes of the East Eggers. Nick Carraway, the narrator of the novel, when describing Gatsby, whether it be physically or emotionally, and sometimes both, tends to, again, use paradoxes. Sometimes the paradoxes that Fitzgerald lays out through the narration of Nick aren't always grouped together here in few sentences. Sometimes they must be connected through things Fitzgerald lays out through the plot's entirety. But sometimes it is right in your face. For example, the quote, "Precisely at that point, it vanished, and I was looking at an elegant young roughneck." Fitzgerald 48. When Nick says he's looking at an elegant young roughneck, we as the readers do not know anything about Gatsby at that point. It is unknown what his background is yet, so how could we know that he potentially could be an actual quote-unquote roughneck? The question that you may be asking at that point in the book is, how can someone be both elegant and a roughneck? This oxymoron is a foreshadow of Gatsby's eventual identity reveal. Another example is from the quote, "An hour later, the front door opened nervously, and Gatsby, in a white flannel suit, silver shirt, and gold-colored tie, hurried in. He was pale, and there was dark signs of sleeplessness beneath his eyes." Fitzgerald 84. This quote is a paradox in the sense that Gatsby, while wearing the colors silver and gold, which are usually symbolized for the wealthy, but in this scene, which is right before Gatsby and Daisy reunite after 5 years, he's clearly nervous, even though he is wearing colors for the people who don't normally get nervous as they have money to buy away those feelings. The third example is the quote, "He must have looked up at an unfamiliar sky through frightening leaves and shivered as he found what a grotesque thing a rose is, and how raw the sunlight was upon the scarcely created grass." Fitzgerald 161. Similar to the paradox that is Daisy, that will be discussed within the next slide, Fitzgerald uses objects that the general public thinks of as beautiful and melds it together with words like grotesque. Nick imagines this to be possibly one of Gatsby's last thoughts in the final moments leading up to his death. Daisy Buchanan is the love that Gatsby has been going after for the last 5 years. Daisy, similar to the name Great Gatsby, is an oxymoron. The name Daisy is of Old English origin, meaning day's eyes, which is in reference to the flower's white petal and circled yellow center. Some words that come to mind when thinking of a daisy are fresh, wholesome, and energetic, which the character Daisy proves wrong by the end of the novel. Her last name Buchanan in Gaelic means both cannon, which meaning in English is the seat of the cannon. A definition of canon is a body of principles, rules, standards, and norms, which can be said about Daisy in that while she may have loved Gatsby, she will not go against what she grew up learning, these set of rules that old money stays with old money. But also, canon is something that is used in war, something harsh, something brutal, the opposite of a daisy. In addition to that, Daisy's maiden name is Fay, which is a Scottish word for fairy. According to Britannica, fays are a diminutive sprite commonly in the shape of a delicate, beautiful, ageless winged woman dressed in diaphanous white clothing. It also cites that some female fairies are deadly to human lovers. For example, Gatsby's death due to Daisy drunkenly running over her husband Tom's lover, Murder Wilson, with her husband going out for revenge, thinking it was Gatsby. More examples for Daisy include the quote, "She dressed in white and had a little white roadster, and all day long the telephone rang in her house, and excited young officers from Camp Taylor demanded the privilege of monopolizing her that night." Fitzgerald 74. Jordan also includes at the end a piece of dialogue for the anecdote, "Anyways, for an hour." Now the color white that Jordan mentions in this anecdote usually represents innocence, but the last bit of dialogue that is mentioned infers that the men just wanted to sleep with Daisy, and she may have been compliant in that. Another example is, "I think that the voice held him most, with its fluctuating, feverish warmth, because it couldn't be overdreamed. That voice was a deathless song." Fitzgerald 96. Feverish is used to describe an unwell person's symptoms, but including deathless means someone or something is immortal. But if a person can get sick, then more often than not, a person can die. Another example is, "For Daisy was young, and her artificial world was redolent of orchids and pleasant, cheerful snobbery, and orchestras which set the rhyme of the year, summing up the sadness and suggestiveness of life in new tunes." Fitzgerald 151. The description provides a paradox and oxymoron in the sense that it uses objects and words like orchids, orchestras, and cheerful to frame words such as snobbery, sadness, and suggestiveness. Pleasant, cheerful orchestras don't usually sum up sadness. The last example for Daisy was, "There was a wholesome bulkiness about his person and his position, and Daisy was flattered." Fitzgerald 151. Earlier in the story, Daisy consistently refers to Tom as hulkish in a condescending manner, in which Tom takes offense when she says it. The next character to exhibit paradox behavior or oxymoron behavior in their description is Nick Carraway, the novel's narrator and protagonist, for lack of a better word. First example is, "Everyone suspects himself of at least one of the cardinal virtues, and this is mine. I am one of the few honest people I have ever known." Fitzgerald 59. Nick believes he is the most truthful character in the novel, which may be true, but yet he continuously keeps secrets from all the characters. In addition to believing himself to be the most truthful person he knows, he also believes himself to be the least judgmental. An example of this is in the quote, "They're a rotten crowd," I shouted across the lawn. "You're worth the whole damn bunch put together." Fitzgerald 154. Very early on in the novel, Nick states that he is not a judgmental person. His father preached this when he was very young, but slowly begins to narrate more judgment as he surrounds himself more so with the East Eggers. As to not have this video be much longer than it needs to be, I advise that you pause the screen and look at these other examples of quotes throughout the book. They don't have as much context, but they are just a few examples of paradoxes and oxymorons that Fitzgerald uses throughout the book. F. Scott Fitzgerald masterfully uses the oxymoron and the paradox in his novel, The Great Gatsby, to present the idea that nothing in life is without contradiction. The foundation of society is built upon a series of contradictory thoughts and rules, and the story of Gatsby and East and West Egg provide one of the most prominent examples of that. Human nature is composed of the species' contrary thoughts. If The Great Gatsby were to be about two lovers separated by time to finally reuniting in the midst of one's newly acquired wealth and the other's unhappy marriage, the story would be one-dimensional, proving Fitzgerald all the more right on the use of the specific literary technique.